The lesson learned here as a designer is like I put my heart and soul into getting the best iconic design for this product. But the reality is, what probably you don't see when this thing is winning the design awards is how much we've done to look at the infrastructure to make this product successful, what the business model looks like. And we had to adapt and we had to pivot. So the evolution of design went from product to total brand experience here. And I want to go further. I want to get into VR. I want to get into web design. I mean, there's so many touch points on a brand now that design is not a function, it's a mindset. And this is what I tell is even though we have a design team, everybody in the company should think like a designer. There's something you can improve.
Welcome to Design Drives, your audio experience about what, how, and why design drives things forward. A podcast hosted by Sebastian Gier, together with forward-thinking design practitioners from around the world.
In this episode, I talk with Michael Seum, who is a VP of Design at Grohe, a company many of you know for their premium bathroom experiences. We talk about the difference between a great designer and a great design leader, based on Michael's personal experience. He went into in-house experience at Whirlpool, P&G, and Cola in the US and Italy, to consulting and startup experiences at Lunatik and Minimal. You will hear the name Scott quite often, by which we mean Scott Wilson, a mutual friend from Chicago and award-winning industrial designer who founded Minimal. After this diverse set of experiences, he made his move into design leadership roles, like Pepsi and now Grohe. A big portion of this talk we spent on how to grow design within a company as a design leader, enlarging a footprint and impact of the design studio, and gaining new capabilities beyond product and industry design. And also how to shape design cultures as a design leader. Hi Michael, how are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I look forward to talk to you. I think it would be great for the audience if you could give them a bit of context about your journey, but then also about your current role as a VP of Design at Grohe.
Yeah, it's a bit of a long story, but I think the short version is it always pays to have a good network as you build your career in design. So I got a call through a friend, a mutual design friend, who said the former VP design here, Paul Flowers, was looking to move on or move up in the organization. So they had just been acquired by a Japanese company. So our parent company is Lixil. And he said, I thought you would be a great fit for the role. And I said, well, I know of Paul. I've never met him personally. I've heard of him. I know he's done tremendous work. And like all things, I've never really turned down a chance to discuss an opportunity. So what started as a long shot, I mean, I'll be really honest, Paul and I had an amazing conversation. We just had this synergistic view on design. And he just said, Michael, I'm going to be honest with you. You're going to have a really hard time justifying somebody like you, your background, because an American designer coming into a German company, this might prove to be difficult. And I said, Paul, I said, I respect the work that you've done. I said, I'm pretty confident that this is an interesting opportunity, and I would welcome the chance to come and interview. And I always felt like that was the door opener, just to say, well, I understand your hesitations. If it's just cultural, let me see if I can break down that barrier. And so that's a little bit of what happened. I think the conversation really started to take off when I met with the CEO of Grohe, and we just had a very symbiotic conversation. I asked some questions around what's important to me with design. He asked a lot of questions in terms of how I viewed brands and what I can do to use design to build the brand. So we had this really enjoyable conversation. This was after a long flight. I landed and went straight into the interview. So it was really energizing for me after coming from Chicago. The irony is I had just taken another job, so I was literally interviewing for this job after being in another role for like less than 6 months. But I think we can dive into that a little bit later, because I just had a feeling this was a huge opportunity for me, and couldn't help but turn it down. But, I'm so glad I'm here, actually. Yeah.
What was your opportunity or your role before that you just mentioned?
So I had just taken a job as a design director for sports and nutrition at PepsiCo. And I was tasked with building design capability outside of PepsiCo has a very large team. I don't know what the numbers are now, but I was part of a small 3 to 4 person team that came into Chicago. And to be honest, my first day, I came in, I stood at the reception. They didn't know who I was. They didn't have an office for me. They didn't have a computer, didn't have a desk. I mean, it was literally starting from scratch. So the infrastructure just wasn't there for design. And don't get me wrong, I think what Mauro Porcini's done with Pepsi is incredible. This was one of the first tasks to really do, and I felt like at times I was tin cupping for funding and money, and so I didn't really have the studio structure around me that would enable design results in a very quick way. So it required a lot of patience, and if there's one thing that I don't have as a weakness, is patience. I like to move quickly, and it just seemed operationally this was a better fit for me from a studio structure and from an organizational structure. I had a direct line to the CEO. I report to the CEO. I mean, it was a completely different scenario. And there was nothing wrong with what was happening at Pepsi. They were just on a different level of the design journey, I think, that some leaders have to encounter. And let's be honest, I probably didn't have as much passion for the products either. I mean, I was working in sports and nutrition, so it was an area that I like. But I think the CPG world is just not for me. I've experienced this at a couple of different points in my career. I'm much more of a product and connected experience type of designer. So packaging and this type of thing, I've done it a couple times to see if it was right, but I didn't find it as enjoyable as what I'm doing now with some of the products at Grohe.
Totally can understand. And that was after your time at Minimal, right, with Scott? Yeah.
So my time at Minimal was phenomenal, and to go back a little bit in my career journey. And I think this is advice for any type of designer. I mean, some of the best advice that I got was to experience as many different things as you can early in your career before you become a design leader.
Yeah.
And so we can talk a little bit about my journey, but that one missing box for me before I took on like true leadership roles was really kind of startup and consultancy. And when you look at the work that Scott's done in the design profession, Scott's a serial entrepreneur. He comes from a corporate background of leading design at Nike. He's done Motorola. So he had a lot of the skill sets, and he transitioned into consultancy from that, and then did the startup culture. And I had an amazing time. And I think with Scott, I will see him in a couple of days when I head home. Okay. So we'll connect back. I think it was a little sad for me to go, but I needed to grow, and I think this is a normal trajectory of any designer. I came in to Minimal focused solely on Lunatik. So what he wanted from my skill set was a little bit of the operational side of it, because he likes to be in that really creative vision process, but he doesn't necessarily, I mean, I think you know this as well, he doesn't necessarily want to follow the whole process through. And he gave me a lot of authority to lead the design work with the Minimal team. But I was covering everything from building the website to packaging to sales presentation. And what this taught me was the role of design as an entrepreneur. And I think it's so powerful what designers can do today. I have a couple designers in my studio now that are running a Kickstarter campaign. And I think this is this is like the new era for designers. Like design is really, really empowering as a mindset, as a business model, and there's so many possibilities. And Scott Scott is a pioneer in this aspect. He's so obsessive with incubating his own brands.
Absolutely.
And that goes into also helping his clients who come in as consulting projects. So I see it as a real nice skill set builder for myself, but also for Minimal as an agency.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I spent a total of 4 years with Scott, and 2 of them were on about 2.5 were on Lunatik as a brand. But the other part of it was I moved into a design director role, and I got a little bit burnt out on the startup side of things. So I just saw an opportunity to transition. I was in the same building working with the same team, and it allowed me to bring in some of my network and clients, and I helped bring in some portfolio projects that I also got to work on and got to design. So it allowed me in this environment of working at Minimal to lead a business, but also to strategically consult. And I think this is a really special career. So I think the takeaway is it doesn't matter when you do consulting as a designer.
Mm-hmm.
Just get it under your belt, because I think it's super, super important to do it. But find a consultant that has a unique point of view. And Scott, I think, is one of the best at this more entrepreneurial aspect of design.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think having these various perspectives on design, corporate perspective, consulting, startup, I think is super important and beneficial as a designer. And I also think it's something I noticed with Scott that he's, benefiting from that a lot, having these various experiences. But yeah, going back to your journey, were you at Lunatik, the startup, during the early days when it was starting out, or was it already on its way when you joined them?
So I had been prior to joining Minimal and Lunatik, I had been working in Italy for 5 years with Whirlpool, and I had been talking to Scott for on and off about 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
So every time I would leave Italy, I'd fly into Chicago, and then I would go to our headquarters in Michigan. And it was literally, I started talking to Scott right before he flipped on the first watch campaign on Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
I was one of the original backers, and I joined him as that campaign was literally finishing.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined at the very early days, but I didn't have anything to do with that first campaign. But I knew it was happening. I saw the prototypes. I saw everything that was happening. So it was very, very close to the birth of Lunatik,
Mm-hmm.
but not directly from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then how did you got to know Scott in the first place then?
I think I'm born and raised in Chicago, and I had met him even through school. I think when I was studying at the University of Illinois, I had known who he was. He had been around through his days in Motorola, so I think we had some professional interaction just through the networking in Chicago. But I think I put more of I just stuck my neck out. I called him directly and I was like, "Can I stop by your studio? Can we have a chat?" And we met in Milan a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
So we just sort of built up a network on just different parts of it. And I think that's this is also advice that I could pass on is I will gladly have conversations with designers that want to talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so rare that you receive a cold call saying, "Hey, I've seen what you're doing. I'm interested." And the few that have done it, I mean, I've hired interns that have just stuck their neck out saying, "I'm really interested in this story that's happening." So I think designers tend to be very introverts at times, and they need to stick their neck out a little bit in the business world. And I'm lucky that I did that with Scott because he gave me a great opportunity to come into the team.
That's very cool. You already mentioned Whirlpool. Can you share a little bit about your time there? You mentioned you were there also in Italy, but not the whole time, right? I think you also worked there in the States, right?
Right. Yeah. Why don't I start a little bit from the beginning
Yeah.
on my career,
Absolutely.
and then we can jump around a little bit.
Yeah.
So I graduated in 1998 from University of Illinois at Chicago. There were only like 10 of us in the graduating class, and it was a really small focused program, no internship formal process or whatnot. But I did a couple internships with a small consultancy. I did some exhibition design, and about 1 year before I graduated, I was down in our model shop, and a professor walked in the door and said, "Hey, there's a guy on the phone from Kohler Corporation who needs somebody to design 3 bathtubs. Who wants to do it?" And I was literally close to this door. I just raised my hand and I said, "I'll do it." And next thing you know, I was sitting in a meeting at the university with the senior designer from Kohler. They had a Chicago office at the time, and he said, "Have you ever designed a bathtub?" And I said, "I have no idea. I never even thought about it."
Yeah.
I said, "But he was in such a jam that he just needed help. So he dropped off 3 foam blocks, like Barbie-size foam blocks, and he just handed to me. He's like, "I'll come back in a couple days. Show me what you got." and I stood there. I was like, "Seriously, what the hell am I supposed to do with these? Like, this is not how I would design a bathtub." So I just started hacking away the foam. And he came back and he looked at him. He's like, "These are horrible." And it was such a learning for me, because I'm like, the brief was garbage. Like, he was such a panic. So I think we both realized that something wasn't right in the way we interacted on the project. And I take this lesson with me today. It's like, I can't fly by my team and just say, like, design this. Like, it needs a deeper context. It needs a purpose, a reason. It needs a whole lot more. And I think he felt so bad for the way he handled this that he offered me an internship out of it. He's like, "No, we can fix this out." So in my senior year, I worked an entire year, 3 days a week. I was able to reshuffle my college classes to Tuesday and Thursdays. So I literally went from 9 till 9 o'clock at night on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I was working in a corporate office for Kohler as an intern. So I started, ironically, where I'm sitting today is exactly where I started my career, in the same exact industry. And I really enjoyed the process of these products. They're extremely design driven. But because I had this internship, they hired me straight after graduation, so I never had to really go on an interview. And I was working remotely for Kohler for about 2 years, and they started to think about converging the brands a little bit. The headquarters for Chicago were basically shut down. They had offered me a job in Wisconsin. I had just met my now wife, and I said, I'm not interested in moving to Wisconsin. I said, she was working at Motorola as an interaction designer. I said, we're staying in Chicago. And then I got an interview in Southwest Michigan, with Whirlpool. And I said, okay, I'm probably not going to take this job, but I'm going to go do the interview because it's good practice. So I was dead set on staying in Chicago. And I just had this amazing connection with the team there. And they said, what's your dream project? And I said, I want to design an espresso machine. And they said, really? They said, because we can give you that project. That could be your first project. And I said, really? This could be quite cool. And they said, no, we've got to. So I had this this funny feeling that I had to go back and tell my then girlfriend. I'm like, you remember I said I wanted to stay in Chicago? Well, that's changing. So I told her this, and she's like, I'm coming with you. And we literally been dating for like 3 months. She's like, no, if this is that important to you, I come with. luckily, both sides worked out. I had an amazing experience at Whirlpool. I took over on the KitchenAid brand, and of course, of 2.5 years, I launched like 18 products, small appliances, so small domestic appliance, and they just exploded. They drove so much new business that it was one part of repositioning design of the company. It was just so apparent how successful these products were. We collaborated a little bit with some outside firms because we were really trying to build capabilities. So I cut my teeth a little bit with Ziba Design in Portland on some of the original strategy, but most of the implementation we did ourselves. So we were a very small team. And I think when I joined Whirlpool, it was 30 designers across all the brands. I think now in Michigan, there are 150 designers, something like this, just in the headquarters. So that was good. And over the course of nearly 5 years there in my design journey, I decided that I needed to try something different. I was getting a little bit of an itch that, okay, small appliances, large appliances, what else can I do? So I approached the VP and I said, if you can move me to Italy, I will stay. But if not, I think I need to experience some different things. I've seen everything. And he looked at me and he said, with all honesty, I would love to move you. I just can't justify it. And I said, well, okay, then I probably will leave. And I don't think he thought it was serious, but I came to him maybe 6 months later and said, I took a job with Procter & Gamble. And this is at the time where they were building design capabilities. And there I went in more of an upstream innovation role. So I had two different parts of the business that I covered because I had a lot of small appliances. I was helping their coffee business unit work on less on the packaging side, more on the device side. So this was at the time when single serve coffee was really taking off, and they wanted to explore different options. So I helped there. I did some work with Procter & Gamble on Swiffer, Febreze. So I worked on a lot of their household care brands. It was quite interesting, but I didn't have the same passion for that part of the business. And it could be that time was maybe design wasn't strategically positioned the way I would have structured it. And that could have been part of my frustration, because some of the projects were very, very interesting, but they didn't, I don't think they were, because they had grown so fast with the design team, that a lot of times they just left designers kind of on these islands to fend for themselves. And I think there's a certain scale that you need to work with design, because not all businesses adopt the design mindset the same way in a large company like that.
Was design too late involved in the process?
Depending on part of the business, design could be what I would call the last decoration station, or very well, it just became a graphic design exercise. How do you grab more attention on an existing bottle? So there were a lot of things, but we can go back and kind of revisit this. I'll just finish up the journey.
Yeah.
So 4.5 years exploring my way through the CPG landscape, and then I get, ironically, a call from Whirlpool, and they said, "You interested in moving to Italy?" And I just kind of laughed. I said, "Yeah, okay, come on, are you serious?" Because we had this discussion in the past, and said, "No, if you really want this to happen, we'll send you an offer." And literally 3 months after that call, I got a message saying, "In your post box is a signed offer for Italy. Do you want to take it?" I resigned the next day at P&G, and within a short amount of time, I was packing for Italy. It was just an experience I wanted, and the amazing part about Italy is I got my first taste of international experience, and I think this is absolutely huge. As you know, we live in a much smaller world, right? And I think you need to, as a designer, step outside of your comfort zones. And if this means relocating halfway around the world, there's no better fuel for me than seeing culture through a different lens. I probably notice things differently about Italian society that Italians see on a daily basis that they don't even question. And I think this fueled me, and it really kind of brought my journey to there. So then from Italy, I went to Scott, and I think we covered a little bit of that journey.
Was it in Milan where you were in Italy?
I was nearby, so I was in an area called Varese. So it's in the Lakes region. It's where all of the Milanese, they vacation or they go for long weekends outside of Milan. So about 40 minutes from Milan, but a very beautiful part of the world.
Yeah, you were just touching on how design was positioned at these various companies. Maybe we can unpack this a little bit, how design was positioned and valued at these various companies.
Yeah, well, I think in some cases, my feeling with Procter & Gamble, for example, was design was positioned as a service, and I didn't really appreciate that. Whereas in my current role, design is a strategic pillar in the company. I report to the CEO. We have an independent function. I work cross-functionally with the marketing team, the head of R&D, myself to develop the roadmap. I report into the CEO, and I'm not positioned within the marketing team, for example. So if I compare that to my days at P&G, was they had a very different business structure. They had something like 18 different brands that were over $1 billion in sales. To put it in frame of reference, Grohe is like 1.6 or 1.7 billion in size in total. So right now, I'm managing a team that's like one brand at P&G in terms of scale. But P&G would basically see designers and businesses, but the head of design at the time, Claudia Kachka, she wasn't a trained designer, but she was very savvy with design. She would basically say, who will fund a designer in the business? I'll give you a designer. So we had different leaders that had different understanding of design. So my time in the coffee business unit, which they ultimately sold, was a complete disaster because I was being asked at one point, they asked me, can you redesign the coffee lid? And I just looked at them and I said, why? What's the rationale? I said, no, can we think about sustainability? Can we think about compressing? Can we think about shipping? Can we look into a deeper business need? And they generally just didn't appreciate those type of questions. Where if I changed to another brand, such as Febreze, we were doing all sorts of consumer insights research. So there was a certain maturity that varied, I think, depending on what business you got dropped in. And for me, I think the takeaway for that, or for any designer listening to this, is to look at the leader that you're potentially interviewing and you're going to work with, and understand what their level of design maturity is. What do they see design? Because if they understand it as a service, then you have a lot of influence you have to build to get them into design as a strategic driver of it. But if they see design as a bigger element to growing a brand and growing a business, it's a huge opportunity. And it's not to say that if they see it as a service, you can't convince them and you can't work through it, but it's a different level of what type of journey you have to take a business on. And so when I compare and contrast from those days, it was just really, really frustrating at times because you had to educate so much of the organization, and that didn't leave a lot of time for the design doing part of it. And I think it's always different depending on the leadership level, understanding you have about design as a driver.
Yeah, got it. So when you were moving from your in-house roles to the consulting space, can you share that experience a little bit, that transition? As you may know, a lot of people do actually the opposite. They do consulting first and then go to in-house, But, how was it for you to, see design from the other side? And, how do you compare both experiences?
I think it was really interesting for me. I think the biggest observation I had, and I'll just compare the consultancy side because the Lunatik is a very special operation where Lunatik was more like was more like a corporate environment because I was almost doing everything across the board. But on the consulting side, I mean, I think Scott has a very good reputation, and a lot of people want his mojo, for lack of better terms. So the phone would always ring with interesting opportunities, and we had to pick and choose the right projects. I think the biggest difference for me was coming with all this corporate background where I could shape and frame the brief. A lot of times with clients, you were kind of told what you needed to do, and then there was a cutoff period where you had to hand them off the work. And I give you one example. We did a project for, it was Rubbermaid, but it was one of their brands. And we did a bunch of designs, and they were absolutely beautiful. And I think I was working with Dustin Brown on this project. He and I were doing water bottles. And we did all this beautiful work. We just handed off, and we never heard anything from the client. And a year later, I'm walking through the store, and I see these bottles on the shelf, and they're almost like what we gave them, but just not quite good enough. And I think I just looked, and I was with my daughter, and she's like, "What?" And I said, "Damn, they really screwed those up." Yeah. And I think that sums up the work of consulting for me, is because what I like about the corporate is I don't want these products. I want to follow them from the start all the way through the finish, literally obsessive across the way. And that's what I like about the corporate world. On the other side, the positive of consulting is you're getting all this new work. It's like
constant
it's
learning.
coming at a much higher, so it's coming at a much faster pace. But I think for me, the frustrating part was the small segments, and then the handover, and just hoping that the product gets executed. In some cases in consulting, you get that. You get to follow the whole project through. But more and more, I think in-house teams are supplementing their strengths with outside agencies, and just trying to get some fresh perspective. You know, the work we did at Minimal with Logitech was often like that. Now, they're a good example of they always executed what we gave them. So there are clients that do execute 100%. Based on the design delivery, but there are also some that just misinterpret, or maybe they put their hands a little bit on it in the process. Yeah,
the Logitech projects, did you work on them as well? They were quite amazing from a design point of view.
Yeah, we did. I did a lot of the. I did some other client work, but I was there during the Logitech. Bracken Darrell, the CEO of Logitech, was my boss in Whirlpool, Italy. So he was involved a lot. He came several times to the Minimal studio, but at the time I was working on Minimal. But I always kind of stuck my head in on the Logitech projects as well. But I never led them personally.
Yeah, really iconic products. How big was the Minimal team when you were there? I think it was not during the early days, right? I think Chris Brown was one of the first employees. When you were there was shortly afterwards, right?
Yeah, I was part of the original design studio. So we were, before he moved into the larger office. Yeah. So I was there when we were about 6 people on the Minimal side, and then at the time there were maybe 3 or 4 on the Lunatic side. So it was a smaller group, and then we moved into, about a year into we moved into the bigger studio and started hiring some of the designers. So I was there when Ish Adams and Jillian Tackerberry. I hired Jillian as a designer, and I know she's kicking some real ass there and doing well. But so I experienced a lot of growth at Minimal, but it was slow. Scott was smart. He was slowly investing in the team, I think, in terms of not getting too big as an agency.
Yeah, looking for the right talents and the right culture as well, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you can share a little bit about your work now at Grohe. What are some of the things you work on? Some of the things you're really looking forward?
Yeah. So I'm literally 4 years on this journey. So I just crossed the 4-year mark, and the biggest thing keeps me. I think I come into this studio, and we have. I feel very lucky, by the way. We have a beautiful studio. I would welcome you to come and visit. We're in a Richard Meier building. It's a very, very nice, well-designed building. We have a private studio, so it's locked, and most of the business can't enter, so it feels like a corporate consulting environment. It's very, very open. And when I came in, I interviewed and I looked at the people, and I asked a question. I was like, do they have to like raise their hand to go to the bathroom? Because they just seem like robots at desks. I didn't see what I was used to with this like interaction and dynamic collaboration. So one of the things I wanted to do was build a culture that I wanted to come to work every day with. And I've really tried to build on the cultural aspect of the design. So we're 20 designers. We have locations, 3 different places. So we have a design studio in Shanghai. We have a design studio in Manhattan, and then also one here where the headquarters is. So we share space with some other brands in New York as well as Shanghai. But it's and this is done to be kind of an international footprint. So out of the 20 designers, I think we have 12 different nationalities on the team, and a huge range of diversity between sex and also years of experience. So I've really built up a team that is based on diversity and a one goal mindset. This is super important to me in today's day and age. What I've been focused on, so one of the first projects that we executed has been really transformational for the company. So I think you can look at our industry and think about faucets and showers. This is the most obvious thing that people draw. But we developed a product we started about four years ago. So it was the first project I really worked on, and it was a connected IoT device. And it's still the most awarded product that we've ever designed. So I think now it's up to 26 design awards since we launched it. It's gotten, I think, a gold at IF, a best of the best at Red Dot. I mean, it's just like any award that enters. We got an innovation award from IDSA, Core, like you name any award, it's picked up. Basically, we were the first connected leakage prevention, so water security is what we called it. But more importantly, this device is also about water management, because we thought there's some kind of statistic of around 6 in 10 people know somebody or they themselves have experienced water damage in their home. And when we found that 6 in 10 of everyone you know has experienced water damage, we said, okay, what do we have to do to solve this problem? So we developed a sensor that could be placed anywhere in the home. It's Wi-Fi connected. Basically, it monitors humidity, it monitors room temperature, and it also alerts you if there's a water leakage anywhere in the house, and it will send a notification to your phone. That's good, but it's sort of like a fire alarm. It just tells you got a big problem, but it doesn't stop the fire. Then we developed another system that had a lot of intelligence built into the valve technology that would essentially test the pressure. It would once a day connect with your the data cloud. It could tell you how much water you're using. It could tell you if you had a micro leakage. And then if one of these sensors went off, it would already probably know ahead of time that you have a leak, or it would automatically shut off. It's got that much intelligence. So we launched this product exactly 2 years ago, and we're on now some second generations behind it. But what's been so transformational about this product is it's created a whole new category for us, because really it's not about the product anymore. It's really opened up a space for us to innovate that is now working with a completely different customer. So we just installed 16,000 of these units in one country, or we're in the process of installing, I should say, with an insurance company sponsoring this. So what we thought was an end user problem was actually a bigger problem for insurance companies because if 6 of those 10 people experience water damage, what do you think the problem is for the insurance company? It's paying for this water damage. So what we found is we thought we were solving a consumer problem, but we were actually creating a device for insurance technology. So we're now starting to build a whole ecosystem, and we've got some collaborative agreements with some insurance companies now, and this is how this device is starting to take off. So the lesson learned here as a designer is like, I put my heart and soul into getting the best iconic design for this product, but the reality is what probably you don't see when this thing is winning the design awards is how much we've done to look at the infrastructure to make this product successful, what the business model looks like. And we had to adapt and we had to pivot, because when we designed this product for the problem of water leakage, we realized we were talking to the wrong people. The plumbers who were being called by consumers didn't want to even deal with this product. It wasn't until the insurance company said, wait, this product can stop that from happening? We lose a ton of money. This will make us profitable. And it was a completely different conversation then, because then the insurance company is like, I'll deal with the plumber. We'll get this installed professionally, and then we won't have this problem ever again. So for me, this is a great example of design as strategy.
Got it.
I could have easily come in and started designing new looking, different style segmentation faucets. That's stuff we do on a daily basis. But I think we've dug deeper into innovation as a driver, and design's a big part of that.
Yeah. I think this project maybe then also require quite a bit of a different design skill set and new design disciplines, right?
When I came in, we had one industrial designer who had been with the company 20 years who was designing an app, and I would say the app looked like physical buttons that had been converted into digital buttons. And I just looked at this and I said, oh my God, we have nobody that has any digital capabilities. We have nobody that had any kind of hardware to software interaction experience. And I literally had to reset. Now we have 3 digital designers, as I call them. You can call them whatever you want, but UI, UX doesn't really matter to me. But people that are looking at the total experience of connected. So this skill set is something I had to introduce to Grohe. And it's something that I experienced at Minimal. We had digital designers as part of the process, and it was often offered as a package depending on the product. And I had to build that capability here in the team. And it was quite hard. It's like, how do you get an amazing UX UI designer to come to a plumbing company? So what we did is I used Behance, and I just drew like a radius. I'm like, okay, I'm sitting in Dusseldorf, and I just started like scrounging portfolios, and I literally cold called and I said, I want to talk to you. Come in and sit down. And we found a digital designer by just being proactive. We didn't do a job posting. We just said, come and work with us. And we started as a contractor, and now he's here every day. It's the work became so interesting. So I think it's super competitive world for designers these days, and we had to be pretty aggressive with this recruitment, and I had to get him behind the vision behind it, because if you just put a job posting, it doesn't come off the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you share a bit more about adding new design disciplines, as well as capabilities, and growing the design team? In previous conversation, we talked a bit, about adding service design, UX UI design, and then maybe also, how did you change the understanding internally of what the design team can do for the company?
Yeah, I one of the key lines that I've used with our CEO. When I started is I kept saying to him, I said, I want design to go beyond product. And I really think for the first 2 years, he didn't hear what I was saying, or maybe that's not the right way to put it. He didn't understand what I meant by that. And when I came into this organization, they are wicked good at developing form, developing geometry. You know, I've got guys that can do surfacing like the automotive industry, right? In terms of the old school design mentality. But I wasn't seeing the evolution of the skill sets. I was just seeing, hey, great renders, great models, whatnot. So I started to build a capability wheel of what I wanted to add, and I kind of showed it as a circle and said, we're doing product design, but we're not involved in any brand experiences. We're not involved in digital experience. We're not involved in creative direction of brand content and so forth. So when I started using this visual to communicate with my boss, it wasn't until then he started to say, I get it, because you're only playing with this part of the pie and you want a bigger piece. And I said, yeah, because this industrial designer can't do digital design. He doesn't have the skill sets on this. And this designer doesn't know how to translate customer service complaints into an opportunity. This is the role of a service designer. This is a role of an interior architect who can translate a brief with a hospitality designer who's trying to specify a hotel, and he or she needs a package of solutions for public spaces, private spaces, hotel rooms. They need to think about the total user experience in a hospitality environment, and so we are starting to now design. I've got a couple of projects in the works where we're collaborating with a hotel where they've approached us and said, here's generally the room. What would you guys do with the bathroom? Whereas before, basically, our interaction wouldn't even happen because they would go to a salesperson. A salesperson would just throw a catalog on the desk and be like, pick one. What do you like? And right now I'm collaborating with architects. I'm working with, we did a project with 3D printing. I went up on a visit to these architects in Norway called Snøhetta. And you've probably seen this building that they've designed called Under Restaurant. Mm-hmm. It's got a huge amount of publicity, and we said we would do something special for them. So we developed 3D printed faucets that don't exist anywhere in our portfolio specifically for this restaurant. So the evolution of design went from product to total brand experience here. And I want to go further. I want to get into VR. I want to get into web design. I mean, there's so many touch points on a brand now that design is not a function, it's a mindset. Mm. And this is what I tell is, even though we have a design team, everybody in the company should think like a designer. There's something you can improve every time you interact with a customer or a consumer, everywhere, from picking up the phone to wait times to how a package is delivered, how it's unboxed. Like this is the mindset that design skills can help influence in a company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this topic you just mentioned is super interesting. You know, how to increase the footprint of design within a company, especially if it's traditionally hasn't been the case, right? So I wonder a little bit how you do the communication and the justification for that. I mean, is it about talking about harmonizing the customer experience on like multiple touch points, or how do you approach these conversations?
Yeah. The most important part of it is getting a seat at the table. Mm-hmm. So I'm very fortunate because I've experienced across different companies where design is sitting. Because sometimes I sit in these strategic meetings. They can be the most boring meetings you could imagine. Okay, and I'm thankful that 99% of my team never has to do what I have to do by sitting in these meetings. But that one bit of information that says, I put in my ear because I get the business context and I can apply that insight to the design team. So I take this little kernel and I bring it back and we show what we can do to fix that problem. So getting a seat at the table is not just about getting recognized for your design talent. It's about the ability to listen to a problem the business has, use your training as a designer, propose a solution. I always tell everybody in this team that our secret power as designers is we can visualize the future before we commit to going there. I don't believe the future happens. I believe you move towards the future you want to create. And I think that's why it's so important that when I participate in some of these leadership meetings, I'm listening to the challenges the organization has. And just to give you just a tangible example, I see that our projects business is dropping slightly, and this could be just a small dip where maybe they're not converting projects with architects getting on. But by being in that room, hearing the challenges, I can pick up the phone and say, can you show me the presentation you're giving to architects? And just by asking that question, I get a file and I'm like, well, okay, it's really obvious. This isn't appealing to the sensibilities of an architect. You're talking to them like the average consumer. Like, how do we do this? And then I'll go on a field trip and I'll sit with the architects. And suddenly I'm using design stories to help the sales team convert products. So it's about having a seat at the table and really understanding how you can help other colleagues with your design expertise. It's very difficult to earn that right to sit at the table. Mm-hmm. It's very, very difficult. But this is the importance of a design leader, I think, is to connect the dots. My job is described very simply. I connect the dots to a business problem, and I use the wicked horsepower of creativity in the design team to help solve that problem. Mm-hmm. So it's really, really fundamentally simple. It's a lot harder to execute, and it requires tireless energy, because there's times when I can hear something and I'm like, okay, if I just ignore that, I don't have to start another project and create another set of problems in the design studio. I could just go to design as traditional business and just focus on that. But I think I have to be a little bit of a pain in the ass with the organization to push it to the next level. So it is about being obsessive about trying a lot of things to move the needle.
Yeah. So what I hear here is that it's a lot about proactivity as well, and being self-driven about enlarging the footprint of design. And you're saying you're hearing something, right? You can either do something about it or not, right? And if you choose to be proactive, you get design involved into new discussions. Right?
I think Sebastian, this is a great word. Proactivity is one thing, but it's also about being proactive from an insight, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the role. Designers can listen to a lot, and that's part of what we should do more is just listen, and then act on that insight proactively. Yeah. And I think that's the role that I play a little bit with the company. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy this. I waited a long time to step into a leadership role. I had a lot of opportunities. I always held back a little bit because I wanted to be a little bit more hands-on with the design process. But now I really enjoy the more like playing the role of coach, on the sidelines. Sometimes I really want to kick the ball badly, but I realize that's not my job. I have to let them do that.
Mm-hmm. And then when you succeed with these involvements in these problems, I think then it's easier for you also to communicate the impact of design, having design involved, right? I assume like also the projects you were mentioning earlier. I think it's hard maybe when you were just getting in, was much harder for you to communicate that compared to now where you did these projects where you were involved in these problems. Now you have a little bit of a, let's call it, portfolio to communicate the impact of design. Right?
Yeah. Good observation. I think I strategically kind of planned out my approach with Grohe. So for 1 year, the first year that I was here, I put myself in what I call the heads down mode. Mm-hmm. I really focused on the team here. So I didn't really come out of the design office. I mean, I was still connecting I was still in these big meetings listening. But I didn't have anything that I could say, well, we did this before, so we do this. So I was trying to weaponize the team a little bit. Mm-hmm. I was trying to build the capabilities, the strengths, find out which designers had what capabilities. So I'm really grateful that my leadership, because I said, guys, in 1 year's time, I'll be able to show you some results. but you need to give me one development cycle to really work with this team, to put the pressure to see. And I had a lot of like challenges with some of the designers, because I was sort of coming in behind a very strong leader, but I was turning a lot of things upside down. So I was changing a lot of things, and I did crazy things. Like one day they left the office, and then I had IT come in and I moved all their desks, just because I wanted them to have a different view on the design studio. And and it was just to get them out of the patterns of what. But that 1 year, I was just testing their personalities. I was trying to understand what I needed to bring to the table to get them to work. But after the results started coming, then the influence really took off. And I think now the challenge is not to get too comfortable. For me, I have to kind of start like it's day one every day. I think that's a challenge.
Yeah. How do you ensure that? How do you?
Well, I think the thing that I like to do with that is I don't use what I call the heavy hand of design leadership. Like I don't tell people what I want to see and kind of hold their hand as they're sketching. But I do a lot of how would I describe this? I sit with them literally side by side working through their projects. And what that does is that gets me re-energized. And it just brings me into their world. But sometimes we will start a new project in the middle of one of the projects they're working on, because it just leads to more questions. So, and I use that diving into this project to put another project in my back pocket, so that a month later I can bring something new in front of leadership and say, what if we did this? So I have to involve myself pretty deep in the process to keep the portfolio fresh. So I value one-on-one time with the designers. I value small group interactions. We just did like a 10-person brainstorm session, and I act like I'm one of them in these sessions. I don't come in as the leader listening and trying to judge and vote. We just keep it neutral. And I think these are the things that I have to do to keep myself fresh.
Yeah. What was also really interesting, how you were talking about building a culture. Maybe you can share a little bit about, you were saying you were moving desks and everyone beginning was sitting there a little bit like a robot. Can you share a little bit more about like changing a design culture or building a design culture?
Yeah, I think the culture of which you work is so important to being happy as a personal designer. I mean, I've experienced a lot of different design environments, and basically, I mean, when you come into a company like Grohe and you are the leader of the company, you are in charge of ultimately the culture. And I just felt like they had been trained for 10 years by a previous leader, that they sort of expected everything to just be the same. And I had to come in there and say, I'm not him. I value everything you guys have done in the past. But this means it's a chance for all of us to reset what we want. So I did a lot of one-on-ones, and I said, you know what, and I still do this today with all of my team members. I always ask them, what are 3 things I can do to improve our relationship? So I give them a chance to say, what are 3 things that I personally can do for you to help you during the course of this year? And I went through and I asked a lot of them what they wanted, and it was funny. It's like sometimes free coffee or, it's just really silly stuff. I'm like, oh, that's easy. Like, we can change all that. But what I realized was none of them said, well, I want to collaborate with this designer on this project. They had been doing a lot of individual work. Yeah. So I started to pair up designers on projects, and it created two interesting observations for me. First of all, it forced them to talk for the first time. I was sitting in my office and I'm like, yes, they're communicating. They're like actually talking to each other. Yeah. And then, then when they saw that they could do this, it must be something in the German culture, because it was like a library in here. But then it got a little bit competitive too. And I loved more of that part of it. So we had this talking and we had this competition. And what I realized is that I could pair different strengths of designers, and the projects got so much better. Mm-hmm. So we went from individual projects to what I would call paired projects, mm-hmm. to now we're handing off projects at different phases. And I love this fact, because now somebody's saying, well, my expertise is on this. I can help so and so with this project, and then pop out of it. And it's great. I've got one guy that just loves to do surfacing nuances. You know, he comes from Volkswagen as a automotive surfacer, and if there's one designer that's struggling with the surface detail, I already see he's like climbing over the desk to work on it. So I just haven't boxed him into individual aspects, and it just required me to play a little bit of the conductor, mm-hmm. to kind of push and pull different strengths of the orchestra. At times.
Super interesting. Yeah, breaking up a little bit the walls of product categories and looking more at the individual needs. You were just mentioning conductor. Maybe as the last topic, touching a little bit on design leadership, and what is your take on the difference between a great designer and a leader?
Yeah, I think this is the beauty of our profession. There are designers that I think can never see themselves in a management position. Mm-hmm. And I think this is completely fine. I really, really believe the design world is diverse now in the skill sets that are required, that not every designer needs to step into a management of being responsible for the creativity of people and leading projects. I believe there's enough space to fine-tune your craft. If you believe as a designer that you are better pushing pixels and creating amazing UIs and animations and apps and all this stuff, focus on that. There's a huge role. But that doesn't come with just staying in narrow focus. You have to stay up to speed on the tools and the methods and the process, and you need to understand the relationship. But there's no reason you cannot be a specialist in this field. At the same time, if you see yourself moving into leadership roles, my only advice would be to hesitate and make sure you have enough diversity in your skill sets before you jump into leadership. I felt an immense pressure to step in from basically never managing people to leading a team of 20. Mm-hmm. It's a huge step of this, and now I don't stress out about it at all. But it was a big journey to really say I'm not going to manage people at all, to managing a team in a huge design budget and roadmaps and projects. So I just think it's up to the individual to decide when they want to make a transition, if they want to make a transition to this. But I believe you can be a leader or you can be a specialist. There's enough flexibility in a design career to meet the needs of your personality from there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And here's the last question. What do you think is the number one skill a design leader should have?
Good ears.
Good ears.
Yeah. I think a lot of leaders believe they should tell people what to do, but I think leadership is about listening. It's about listening deeply, and then making a response. And this is not just for me, but this is just from past experiences. I wish sometimes my leadership in the past would have listened more, because I had some of the answers. And I think it's a lesson that I take very seriously. And I think it's as designers, we say empathy a lot. Mm-hmm. I think it's an overused term. Mm-hmm. But I think listening is a leadership trait that cuts across not just designers but every leader.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you so much, Michael.
My pleasure, Sebastian. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good to have this conversation.
Yeah, amazing perspectives, I think, on design leadership and your journey and all the learnings. So thank you so much.
That was the episode. If you want to give us feedback on the podcast, have something to contribute to the next episode, or just want to get in touch, feel free to connect with us either on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram messages, or simply via the designdrives.org website.